Time for Reserve Bank to give all borrowers a nice Christmas present before they go to sleep. The Reserve Bank go to sleep for 2 months. 2 months. They don't come back until the first week of February. That's a long time for the captain of the ship to be away. So what do you reckon they're going to do today?
Well, I think they'll keep rates on hold. I don't think they'll move them. But what should they be doing?
Well, as usual, we answer this two ways. We say what the Reserve Bank should be doing and why, and we end up by saying what they will do. So I'll start with what they will do. They're very predictable. This new guy is no better than the previous guy. He doesn't know how to create wealth. He hasn't created wealth himself. He's been a career public servant, doesn't understand the coalface. So what he should do is drop rates down to 0.5, which would still be one of the dearest rates around the world.
Yep.
That's a 1% drop. Should do that. But more importantly, he should get the banks to start to take notice of the RBA rate drops. Now, up until 2007, depositors would know and borrowers would know that when a Reserve Bank dropped rates, it wasn't a matter that the banks would follow suit. It was just simply a question, was it days or weeks before they passed it on in full?
Yep.
However, since then, the banks have been sitting on nearly 4% of cuts that they haven't passed on. Our Reserve Bank isn't being pushed by the treasurers, and the treasurers aren't pushing the banks to pass this on. So it's highway robbery, and we can show you charts which are on Reserve Bank's own chart pack that comes out every month to show you two things. One, the huge jump in the profit margin of the Reserve Bank since the monopoly has come in. And secondly, there's a chart to compare the profit levels of our banks versus the world banks, and that's a huge difference. They're price gouging, it's a monopoly, and they're doing nothing about it. So, what should Reserve Bank do? Well, it should learn how to get its predictions right. So I'll go back to a statement dated the 4th of October 2016. So it's saying 2 months later, here they were saying funding costs for high quality borrowers remain low. Well, I've got facts to prove that's not right. They're 4 times the Reserve Bank's cash rate, it's the highest it's been. They then go back and say the economy is continuing to grow at a moderate rate, which was a lie then and it's a lie now. In fact, there's every chance that the GDP figures when they come in, if you strip out the export income from coal and iron, which doesn't go to you and I anyway, we might even be a negative quarter, which is well on your way then to having a recession. But they say it's continued to grow at a moderate rate. They say the large decline in mining investment is being offset by growth in other areas. Well, let's have a look. How accurate were they? Residential construction, well, there's the joke. Because everyone knew, apparently except the RBA, that APRA has put the squeeze on construction since June 2015. That's right, 2015. So, in fact, I think it's about $5 billion drop in construction going on, and they think it's going to replace employment from the mining sector. They're not reading the coalface very well at all. They say public demand and exports will offset growth and give you jobs from the mining sector. Well, no, again, that's wrong. Our terms of trade actually has dropped from a high of 120 down to 80. So again, the crystal ball is wrong, and this is just from 4th of October. The fact that they're wrong means that they should be doing something on rates, doing something urgently, but more importantly, make sure the banks don't treat them with contempt. Get back to the old days of the treasurers ringing the banks and saying pass it on in full. The old days where the Reserve Bank got onto the banks and said pass it on in full. Household consumption is growing at a reasonable pace. It's not, it's falling, but appears to have slowed a little recently, which is true. So what are they going to do about it?
And we recently saw some of the banks are already putting their rates up as well. So we expect to see a rate drop today to compensate for that, because normally banks put their rates up, then the Reserve Bank drops their rate.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So history shows that. We'll see this afternoon if that's correct or not.
Well, we'll stay tuned and we'll see exactly what happens. Will the Reserve Bank actually start passing on cuts to the consumer? Will they deliver a Christmas present, or will they be Scrooge?
Afternoon, Kevin. Well, the Reserve Bank has just met, and guess what?
What?
Rates remain unchanged.
You mean Reserve Bank have turned out to be the Scrooge of Christmas?
Yep, no Christmas present this year.
and they've got no crystal ball because they don't prophesy that we're going to have a tough time in the quarters ahead. In fact, they prophesy that we're going to have a good time. I think the wording they used, expansion in employment, and I don't know whether they get that one, and they see higher prices are proving a boost to national income. These guys are in fairy dairyland. I think this is the trouble of having an independent Reserve Bank. It should be back into Treasury. They should be accountable to the politicians who have got to face the cameras every day and justify, what's the basis of these words. It just simply doesn't make sense. For instance, the number one doctrine of the Reserve Bank is to maintain full employment, which is not, 10% unemployment and underemployment. It's a massive 10%.
Yeah.
Well, here they dodge around and they say the unemployment rate has declined this year. Well, that's pathetic. They're saying 0.1%. Although measures of labour underutilisation are a little changed, what they're escaping out there is the fact that there's 10% underemployment. That's a huge number of people who want to earn more, want to spend more, want to create more jobs with that money, can't do it. So that's a sign of impending recession. And it says, but unemployment growth overall has slowed. Yet it then says in the next breath, there will be continued expansion in employment in the near term. I just don't know what facts these guys are looking at, but the facts I'm looking at are the facts of the Reserve Bank's own figures that come out every month called ChartPat. Have a look at it and see the lies that they're peddling in this policy. They're completely incompetent.
Kevin, from the statement, what positives do you see in there today?
Well, they pointed to a boost to national income from rising resource prices. But this is the problem of having bureaucrats that have never ever been in private enterprise or done a profit and loss or a balance sheet or gone to a bank to borrow money. When oil prices rise, coal prices rise, how does that put money in your pocket? How does it boost national income in the people's pocket? How can they get more money to spend?
Doesn't
help, does it?
No.
And yet they're taking that as an excuse to do nothing. So I think Reserve Bank have been a Scrooge. They're taking Christmas out of Christmas, so there you go. It's Reserve Bank. But soon they'll be back in February saying, we got that wrong. Then they'll be dropping rates.
So their last statement on the day in their release today talks about sustainable growth in the economy and achieving inflation.
Again, they don't give any reasons for these absurd statements that they're using to mask doing nothing. So it's a little like a rabbit caught in the headlights. It thinks it's safe doing nothing. So the Reserve Bank, full of incompetence, I think they're safe doing absolute nothing. Meanwhile, there's 10% underemployment out there. 1 in 10 people aren't earning enough money or don't earn any money. That's their number one charter, full employment. They're not achieving it. They're not achieving it here. They also say that there's investment remains subdued, but turn around and say institutions are in a position to lend more for worthwhile purposes. Whereas we showed this morning there's actually a credit squeeze going on. There's been a credit squeeze going on since the banking monopoly. And so the reverse of what they've said here, people can't get funding, businesses can't get funding, there's a credit squeeze on. And as you know, Phil, if you've got more than 4 properties and you want to go and buy a 5th, there's a credit squeeze going on because APRA has said, you're a naughty boy, you're trying to get enough money, enough equity, enough wealth that you can avoid the pension. You're naughty, you should look forward to a pension. That's a credit squeeze, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. And I'm experiencing that myself as I'm buying a property at the moment.
There's no mention in this report of the big break on employment, the big break on the economy. They don't even mention it. It's APRA, foolishly over the last 18 months, have said we're going to put a credit squeeze on property investors who we only want to be 10% of the market. Now, they're normally between 30 and 40% of the market. They've stopped all those people buying properties. There's no mention here, but that's a credit squeeze, and that's hurting construction. And that's where the RBA came out 12 months ago and said with mining dying, we'll get increased employment for these 10% underemployed because of construction in the residential sector, particularly. And what's happened? No mention of APRA's idiotic stance at all. So it's a failure. They've turned out to be the failure that we've been predicting now for a number of years. I call it the redundant Bank of Australia. And few people are aware that it normally wasn't independent like this. It was normally under the watchful eye of our elected politicians. Howard elected to give this independence. Let's take it back and put it back as part of Treasury and get the spotlight on these stupid decisions and get them justifying their decisions. At the moment they're not being interrogated, not justified, and meanwhile our 10% unemployment is sliding towards a recession.
Well, once again, the Reserve Bank's asleep at the wheel. Let's hope their New Year's resolutions will hopefully wake them up, and then we'll see some great improvement in 2017.
Well, there's a lot of job sites, thousands around the country that are stalled now because the builders can't get these pre-sales from investors because APRA said these investors are bad people. So there's a lot of unemployment out there, a lot of hurt, and it's all APRA and the Reserve Bank, as you say, asleep at the wheel. Politicians, when are you going to do something? Media, when are you going to do something? You know the problem with the media? They're all paid for by the banks. So when they talk about interest rates and the banks say, oh, we can't pass on the rate cuts, the people that are saying that are paid for by the bank. But our chart this morning showed that our banks are very, very profitable, particularly since the banking monopoly came in. They can pass on huge amounts of money that would be in your pocket, my pocket, that we could spend and create jobs.
But like we said this morning, they're already starting to put rates up outside of the Reserve Bank.
And what's the Reserve Bank doing about it? Nothing.
Nothing.
What's the government doing about it? Nothing. But the one good thing, and APRA's doing nothing about it, they're supposed to be the watchdog. ASIC actually are making the right comment that banks can lower the rates and the banks can lower it in line with the Reserve Bank, as they always did. Why isn't APRA saying that? Why isn't the RBA saying that?
They all asleep at the wheel.
I think so. Well, when are we going to get a politician that wants to take this up?
Well, we keep trying, Kevin. We keep lobbying different politicians. 2017 will be no different. We'll keep putting forward your ideas and the club's thoughts on interest rates. So let's hope we can have some influence next year.
Well, the big thing is we've got the track record because we've been right with all of our predictions that the RBA have been wrong in what they've done. We've got the evidence from our national conferences, we've got the evidence from our press releases, and we've got the evidence that we've been on television saying that banks' movements were wrong on what they should be. We've been right, the RBA has been wrong. Get rid of the RBA. Well, it's been good chatting through the year, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Even if we've got a stupid Reserve Bank.